This channel boasts a series of videos entitled 5 Reasons. Traditionally, we examine 5 reasons why a certain band is disliked. And the reason for this is because there is a great, large heavy metal community, and there's a musical community that swirls around it as well. It's interesting to see some of the silly reasons that some folks will come up with to really dislike a product or dislike some music. While a lot of the bands that are mentioned in those videos are bands that I like, one of the traditional responses is that of hate toward me. Either that or just toward the idea in general. So let's take a look at bands that are actually overhated. These are groups that get a lot of that disrespect, a lot of that bane, and it might not be qualified. So here are 10 overhated bands, and we're going to start, of course, with number 10. My name is coverkillernation, by the way, in case you don't know. Number 10 is Babymetal. Now, these guys are the lowest on the list and the newest on the list, considering they've only been out for the past couple of years, and they have certainly garnered an excessive amount of attention throughout that time scale. And this is something that's really ridiculous that they get a ton of hatred from the heavy metal genre, considering it is a genre that consistently is looking for newer sounds, newer spins on something that has perhaps been in practice for a little while. So to see Babymetal, which is essentially a group that is combining a little bit of J-pop along with, great heavy metal texture, is a little bit strange to say the least. Now, some folks feel that this is nothing more than a gimmick, that this is nothing more than this or that. It's a parody, it's mockery. There's parody and mockery within heavy metal's borders at all times. Now, I understand some of the arguments state, well, then we'll have to include even more folks into the metal genre that don't belong, but these girls definitely do, and their backing band is proof. Number 9 is ACDC, and what I'm going to call elder metal. Now, this is something that is very much associated with the changing of the guard, the generational gap. There are many that are metal fans of today that feel that the bands of old no longer have that same edge to them or never really did. How could they be considered heavy metal? And we discussed in the 5 things you may not know about Judas Priest video that one of their albums is one of the reasons why the term heavy metal became a household name. However, to say that Judas Priest or Iron Maiden or Black Sabbath or ACDC, the new wave of British heavy metal, some folks will even throw in Led Zeppelin, which I kind of disagree with myself, but potato isn't metal is kind of weird. It's kind of strange. Yeah, it's not one that has that same brutal, deathy sound that you may hear from bands of today. It's not slamming death metal or gore metal or whatever it may be. But you have to understand where you came from, and you have to respect where you came from. Now, does this mean that we should go back to proto-metal bands such as Sir Lord Baltimore, or go all the way back to the 1920s with the blues and include them too? Is heavy metal now just going to become this huge umbrella? Should we include Lady Gaga because she likes Iron Maiden? No, let's not be ridiculous. But you do need to have a little bit of respect for where things came from. That way you can understand where things are. Number 8 is Opeth. Now, this is one that you're going to see a little bit more in practice later on this year whenever Sorceress comes out, because based around where that sound takes them is going to be based around how many people like or hate it. That's right, in the 2010s, there's been a lot of folks that have been overhating this group based off of their transition in sound from that of progressive death metal to one of more progressive rock. And that's something that makes a lot of heavy metal fans, or just fans in general, quite uncomfortable. They were even getting some hate in the 2000s for sounding the same, or their songs are too long, or this or that. But this is a group that has basically embraced their own identity and has decided to sort of tread their own path. And based off of that, there are a lot of groups that are certainly branching out a little bit more and experimenting. It was something that was always happening within the metal construct, but it's one that definitely feels like it's happening a bit more. There's a little bit more of a relaxed feel to it, not as much fear. But Opeth is a group that should be respected simply based around the fact that they don't take themselves overly serious, and the music is pretty good. Even if you don't like it, definitely one thing to be respected, considering they have definitely made a style of music that you would never think would be actually somewhat big into kind of a big deal. A lot of people know this name. Number 7 is Slipknot, and this is going to couple in with number 6, so we're just going to throw these two together. So Slipknot is a group that's based out of the new metal setup that came from the 1990s, early part of the 2000s. But we're also going to throw in moderate metal. So number 7 is Slipknot, number 6 is new metal and moderate metal. These groups get a lot of hate based around the fact that they are popular groups and they have a large-scale fan base. They don't feel like they have quite as much in the way of perhaps creativity or so much of a of a root to some of the Elder Scrolls of metal or what they're trying to represent. Either that or it feels like it's just simply way too geared for the radio and way too simplistic. The interesting part about this argument, this over-hated approach, is that if you simply dislike the music and have distaste for it, then that's one thing. But it is also making a lot more individuals a little bit more primed to perhaps explore the heavy metal genre. So, while you might dislike the bands, while you might hate their sound, you do have to respect the fact that more folks in the past 15 to, going on 20 years have definitely scoped out the heavy metal genre. So it's definitely kept things a little bit viable. And while bands like Immure and Attila, Asking Alexandria and bands of that variety may feel like they are sort of trying to take metal to a brand new place that's, well, not a place where it should go, they still have that same interest factor. And even though some of the fans can be annoying, and even though they're just trying to defend their bands the same way that you do, there's a lot of hate that's associated and thrown around. And plus, nu metal needs to be really seen for what it was. It was a nice benchmark. It was sort of a way in which to, transition heavy metal into the 20th century, or the 21st century rather, from the 20th century. And considering so many people felt that heavy metal had died in the 1990s, you would think that the appreciation factor would be a little bit higher. But I guess they were expecting something different, like the second wave of thrash, which actually would have been like the fourth. Number 5 is Avenged Sevenfold. I'm hoping that you're still with me here. Now, Avenged Sevenfold gets their own place on this list, considering they get a lot more hate based around their fanatical fan base, which sounds like a little bit of alliteration and a little bit like it's, redundant, but it's true. They have a fanatical, series of fans, and they are willing to defend them to the very death. They're old and new, so there's once again a generational gap. But Avenged Sevenfold's also a group that has modernized their sound. They have sort of gone through some different cycles within their own personality. And based off of that is also caused there to be some infighting within fans themselves, or fans that have become no longer fans, or people that weren't fans that turned into fans. Either which way that you look at it, this group definitely gets a lot of assault from all different directions. However, this is also a group that does get a modicum of respect from a lot of folks, but also feel that they have way too many links to, that style of music that sounds like it's heavy, but actually has a lot of whining in it. So, yeah, this is a group that gets it from sort of all angles, which kind of sucks considering the group, whenever it's, whenever they're really writing at their best, is pretty damn good. To the point where they are actually able to get the services of Mike Portnoy, formerly of Dream Theater, in order to write perhaps one of their more powerful albums, in Nightmare. Number 4, we have Five Finger Death Punch. This is another modern group that's getting a boatload of hate, and they're getting a boatload of hate because many are feeling that their sound has gone a boatload downhill. Whenever this group first started out, they were seen as perhaps one of the new hot takes on the heavy metal genre, and one that was going to break through, similar to what Avenged Sevenfold or Slipknot had done in previous generations, getting metal a little bit of radio airplay. However, now it's become very much a concept or an argument about whether or not this band is heavy metal or hard rock. At times, it seems like they try to blend a little bit of each, which, is that really all that bad? But then there's also the fan base. Then there's also Ivan Moody himself. There's a whole video that's based off of this, titled 5 Reasons Why People Hate Five Finger Death Punch, and some of those are bona fide ridiculous. While Moody does have his own demons, this is definitely something where concern should be showed toward the man as opposed to mockery, to see if maybe he can get himself on the right track. Plus, the band does do some things for soldiers, which is definitely something to be respected. Again, one of those things where the band is selling, people do like them, a little bit of respect really couldn't hurt, but if you dislike the sound, it's completely understandable. That brings us to the bronze medal, number 3, Dream Theater. This is a group that gets a lot of hate considering they're a progressive metal band that has really brought the whole idea to prominence, and has definitely brought the idea of progressive wankery to prominence as well. Many folks feeling that whole derivative notion from the 1970s that progressive musicians feel that they're better than everybody else comes out a lot whenever talking about Dream Theater, and this is one that's simply just ridiculous. Especially, once again, if you look at the aforementioned Mike Portnoy. Portnoy doing a bunch of old school hard rock songs or heavy metal songs on a little Hello Kitty drum set. I don't exactly think that's somebody who's pinkying up and thinking that they're some sort of high-class bitch. But this is just simply a bunch of guys that love to make a lot of, thought-provoking music. They're classically trained, and they definitely have the skills to back them up. Now, while some of the complaints about the musical structure, either that or the music itself, is certainly understandable, criticism is one of the fundamental components that breeds not only conversation, but also breeds whether or not a band is in the upper echelon as opposed to the lower, gets them above the underground. This is also something where a little bit of respect for something that perhaps you don't understand or just simply don't like, it could go a long way. I don't necessarily like country music, but I do respect the fact that for a certain amount, certain fan base, Okay, I really just don't like country music, especially bro country. Bro country. Hate it so much I can't even say it. Number 2 is Slayer. This is a group that's insane whenever it comes to the hate that it gets, considering it's insane whenever it comes to the love that they get. Basically, if World War III were to be caused by heavy metal, it would be based off of Slayer. It would be based off of all of their myriad of fanatical fans going to war with all of the folks that think Slayer isn't all of that in a bag of Cheetos. You know, this is something that definitely gets a bit ridiculous. If you take a look at some of the comments of the 5 reasons why people hate Slayer video, you'll definitely understand. Some folks just really like a band that's able to do the same thing for a myriad of their career and not exactly, change up the fold a bit. They sort of appreciate the consistency, I suppose. But this is definitely something where, your personal opinion could be basically really resemblant as to where you are on the battle lines of this one. So, are you going to be on the side of the North that loves Slayer, basically has Slayer tattoos, have the swords of Slayer? Or are you going to be, I guess, the part of the South, the people that don't like Slayer? Or maybe they're actually the South. Maybe the people that like Slayer are the South because of South of Heaven. Maybe their next album should just be called The North. That doesn't sound nearly Slayer enough. Number 1 is Metallica, and Metallica is definitely the most overhated band considering they are arguably the most popular heavy metal band of all time. This is the group that has the highest selling heavy metal record of all time in the Black Album. All of their discs have some sort of power behind them, whether it be the power to cause you to bang your head until you go numb, or the power of making you wish that they had never recorded something. Hello, Saint Anger. Hello, Lulu. And based off of those 2 albums alone, a brand new breed of hater has really emerged, and a brand new and actually kind of understood version of hatred has sort of emerged. And that's the fact that, Saint Anger was seen as a huge culminating disappointment, one that was an even bigger disappointment than the load and reload cycle to most folks. Basically seeing this band go from being one of the most popular and best thrash metal bands ever to something that was somewhat of a shell of their former selves. However, like this band or hate this band, they have been hugely influential. They're similar to Black Sabbath or Iron Maiden. This, along with a lot of the other groups from the elder age, are the ones that have caused the metal scene of today, some of the bands that you may like, the Avenged Sevenfolds of the world, for example, to really want to pick up a guitar and check things out. Yeah, Pantera should be on here as well. However, this is certainly one where with Pantera, it's more so based off of the idea of maybe Phil Anselmo's mouth, they saved metal, Dime being, taken to elative status. Yeah, they're kind of overhated a little bit as well, but I also think that some of that they bring upon themselves. So maybe you can put them at number 2, in the same position as Slayer. I think those 2 bands really go hand in hand whenever it comes to the most fanatical and most absurd fan bases. But Metallica is the one that always seems to conjure some sort of opinion. It's to the point where if I were to make a video tomorrow speaking about something that, I don't know, Kirk Hammett said about, the weather, there's no doubt that it would be one of the best, responded to videos of that week. That's just the power that Metallica has. And that's why they're also extremely overhated. Considering whenever you have that much power, whenever you have that many different opinions, well, half of those are going to be on a negative. There you have it, ladies and gentlemen, 10 or actually more overhated bands. If you think that there was one that was left out, leave it in the comments below. If you have an idea for a future top 10 video, leave that idea in the comments below. My name is CoverKillerNation, and I'll talk to each and every one of you guys next time. Take care.